Let's talk about the war and what's going on in the world right now. No, not that war. The Ukraine-Russian war. The one that's suddenly out of the news cycle. We'll get to that new war in a minute. The Ukraine-Russia war, which so many geopolitical analysts didn't see coming, was entirely predictable to a certain group of people. The power realists. Not the postmodernists, not the idealists, and not the constructivists. The archenemy of power realism are the idealists, who can encompass anyone from traditional liberals to neoconservatives to social democrats. They're all people who want to export their ideas into a bigger stage. The realists see no reason for this. Ideology is a lie. It's power and survival that matter. These ideologies, as you can see, don't really break, though, along right-left political lines. Otto von Bismarck was a realist. Napoleon, an idealist. Kissinger, a realist. Woodrow Wilson, an idealist. All different, some good, some bad. A realist like Kissinger committed war crimes by bombing Laos in the Vietnam War. A realist like Bismarck united Germany after 1,000 years of warring tribes dominating the region. An idealist like Wilson was a racist and systematically implemented racism back into our system. Napoleon was an idealist and very nearly succeeded in uniting Europe, which if he had succeeded, likely would have avoided World War I and II. Speaking of which, this is a topographic map of Europe. If you notice, there's a lot of flat land leading straight from the traditional Western powers to Moscow. The geography of a country can inform not just its international relations, but can shape its culture and politics and war. Check out Switzerland. They're not neutral because it's cultural. It's cultural because they have the geography to support being neutral. You can't invade the Swiss even with modern air forces without huge cost and resources to get into the mountainous country itself. The modern Swiss government even requires each citizen have fallout shelters, so they're impregnable even to modern war machines. The Russians don't have that luxury. Any invading force can make a beeline straight at Moscow, and it's not just their technological and educational center, that's their cultural center. The Russians will defend Moscow with everything they have, and that's why for the past 500 years, the Russian military strategy has been to control satellite states and peoples around Moscow to use as a buffer for retreat. They have no other option. The modern Ukrainian government actually knew this all too well. Their former Secretary of Defense, or the equivalent, called the war's date down to year and month. We also knew this was going to happen because of the Russians' demographic collapse. They're going to have no more young people very shortly. This was the last chance they had to actually wage a ground war and secure as much land as possible to survive. But this didn't happen in a vacuum. The Americans allowed it to happen. Since the end of World War II and the start of the Marshall Plan, America has been the security guarantor for free trade. We didn't do this out of kindness, it was strategic. We guarantee everyone can trade by having our military protect trade routes and ships, something we learned was very necessary after U-boats from Germany began sinking merchant vessels in World War I. And in return, everyone comes to us to facilitate that trade and everyone else in our network for that matter. We essentially bribed everyone to get along. And for the past 75 years, that system has become so ingrained in world economies that we almost forgot it could change if America stopped guaranteeing that protection. Google Trump warns the Germans. You'll actually see Trump, a man who is supposed to have no international relations chops, correctly call the Germans hamstringing themselves by tying themselves to Russian gas, taking themselves out of the global free trade network guaranteed by American military might. The Germans did the same thing with most of their raw resources. They got them from Russia until Europe, oddly enough, did something smart and united against Russia. The Germans are still screwed, though, because they're selling most of their goods to the Chinese. We'll see how long that lasts. But from 1992 onward, we had 3 presidents put out the worst set of foreign trade and security policies imaginable: Clinton, Bush, and Obama, who can be summarized as do everything wrong, do one massive thing very wrong, and do nothing. All of these men sitting on different parts of the political spectrum were idealists. The main political philosophy of the country should be exported outward. They gave up on the realist power structure, believing it could never change. But after a quarter century of their mistakes, we needed a political surgeon to come in and fix the security agreements. Instead, we got the political chainsaw that was Trump, and he cut the system apart, threatening NATO members with destroying the NATO alliance if they didn't own up to their end of the security guarantees. Now, I'm not here to pass judgment on whether that's a smart or dumb idea. I think there's an argument to be made that time for amputation was here and surgery wasn't going to fix the problem, but it is what happened. America no longer protected everyone. Mix that with Russian geography, there are recent demographic changes, and Russia needs to invade Ukraine, specifically Crimea, to get the oil resources in the area. This war has nothing to do with denazification or Russian ethnicities. It is purely strategic. Everyone forgot countries can go to war over resources and not just ideologies. Oddly enough, Biden, who has the foreign policy track record worse than all four of those men combined, has played Ukraine perfectly. Rumor mill is he's actually going to his advisory meetings now, and he's now that he's president, and he's actually listening. Russia losing badly as they were at the start would have been disastrous for American interests. The only chance they use nukes is if they see the war as an existential crisis, which they do, and they couldn't wage a ground war effectively enough, so nukes are their only option. A lower percentage option, but an option nonetheless. So the only thing to do for America was to bolster the Ukrainians enough so the war drags on, gets a high body count, and eventually whoever wins, it doesn't matter. So long as Russia burns its resources and loses its ability to wage another war with its demographics unable to provide a new generation, which is what will happen. While I've been singing the praises of power realism's predictive powers, this is its flaw. It's cold, it's calculating, and it has no interest in human life or ideology. The state is the main actor, not leaders, not ideology. The system is anarchy, and states desire power to preserve themselves and will pursue it rationally. Ideology is a lie. It's all a numbers game. It's intense pragmatism that drives power realism's predictive powers. Speaking of which, don't be surprised if you see Turkey become the next superpower. 220% population increase since 1980, a military to back themselves up. They're positioned geographically well to dominate trade in the region and could even start handing out security guarantees like the US did to neighboring countries. Surprise, surprise, though, as that US system collapsed, another war started in Israel. Expect to see more of this in the next 20 years. China, Russia, Germany, Egypt, they're all dead. Turkey, India, and whatever African conglomerate emerges after damming up the Nile are the new players. This brings us to Project Diablo 2. How's that for a segue? And how the development team makes changes to this game. Because whether they know it or not, I don't think they're reading from a power realist playbook on game design. They follow the same intense pragmatism seen in power realist politics. As far as I can tell, they break the game into 3 categories and do something different with each one, but always in balance. I'd call them build balance, accessibility, and the economy. Now, we in the PD2 community, the players, I'd argue are dominated by idealist players. We all want our perfect game soaked in the nostalgia of what drew us to it in the first place, whether that's the casual, laid-back, log-in-and-play style or the cutthroat, hardcore adrenaline junkie. This is why we would fail where they succeed. Now, I've argued time and again that build balance needs to be centered around tryhards, as those game breakers can, break the game so hard, and then the build becomes copied. The order topples. The game balance has to be done through the playtesters and the sweats, where everything goes to hell. Look at the recent summons on changes. Decoys had their threat reduced. Why? This was a casual, friendly build that takes away the ability of daddy gamers to have some survivability in hard fights like Ubers. Well, the tryhards broke the decoys. They became too easy. You could run Ubers on day 1 without even taking damage. Even as PD2 has made casual, friendly changes to other systems, build diversity has always been about nerfing top-end players exploiting builds to break the game. Casuals be damned. Not fun, it's not easy, but it's necessary to maintain the structure. Pragmatic. I once asked during a beta why Demon Machine was getting nerfed for summons on. It wasn't a big nerf, and I just didn't understand it. I can't remember the mod, but I do remember his response. He lolled at me and said that's not a summons on nerf. It's a nerf to proc builds that were exploiting the Demon Machine. They said the same thing about Boazon nerfs. It wasn't a Boazon nerf itself. It was Enchant Sorks breaking the Boazon build. It wasn't the casual, dad-friendly build we were balancing around. It's the top-end breakers they're going after. You game balance around the tryhards. Always. It's never about you. But if your ideology is I want to log in and have fun, then you'll see everything as a nerf coming for you and your build specifically. So then the devs must be evil tryhards themselves. They would make the game inaccessible to casuals. Well, not so on accessibility. They've centered almost around the casuals to an extreme degree, making fights easier and mats more readily available as time goes on. Just good pragmatic thinking to keep a healthy player base, even if the tryhards love their gatekeeping. You see how they never give one side an ideology bump. It's just what needs to be done. The Uber fight has keys dropped from maps now. The Declone fight is nerfed and more accessible, even if they did add some higher difficulties. Daddy gamers farming mostly LOD content for fun now have corruption zones. Those plain skillers that can be hard for the casual gamers to obtain now drop from those map bosses, unique map bosses. And if the tryhards farm them, the prices get depressed for the casuals. They systemically made accessibility changes in terms of casuals. A harsh departure from their build balance aimed at what the tryhards do. Notice there's no ideology here, and that's a good thing. It's just core balance. Keep Diablo 2 going as if development never stopped. The economy is where they really shine, as they've been trying for seasons to get things like Zod and Sham runes to be statistically worth what they should, as they are the rarest. While adding in rune words that were desirable didn't help too much, adding runes to the Declone fight did, and the prices balanced out to where they should be. Notice there's no ideology here. It's just the facts. Zod rune is the rarest, and should be worth a lot more than it is. And while we're running up the prices of runes, even as the supply doesn't increase, deflation of prices, we'll introduce some inflation by dropping lesser currency items like World Zone Stars and Jewels from our newly added game mechanics. I know Senpai said he didn't have a traditional education, but I wonder if someone on that team has an economics background, because this is interest rate controlled by the Fed almost to a textbook level. This is what I mean by game design. Ideology is left at the door. The game isn't balanced between hardcore or softcore, or casuals or sweats. It's just pragmatism. They aren't nerfing you and taking your fun away, they're balancing. They're not destroying the challenge and making daddy gamers happy, they're balancing. It's always funny to me the dev team here can be both catering to a cabal of elite streamer types and babying the casuals at the same time. Neither is true, and you can almost start predicting the balance changes if you start looking at the game pragmatically. Hell, Senpai once said in stream he doesn't even take feedback that seriously. He goes through every skill, every season, and just says, what do I want to change about this? Funny enough, we're probably inconsequential to the dev team. Even if a change specifically to a summons on starter weapon happens after I mention it as a great summons on starter weapon. Yeah. No, just kidding. And because of that outlook and how inconsequential we are to them, we benefit. Much like the power realists, maintaining world order while everyone else sees a fight against another ideology. See you guys later. Oh, not see you later. I'm going to leave you with a clip from a very drunk but very wise man. Go be good to each other. See you later. Sorry, I have to keep stopping this because I'm messing it up, but go out and say something nice to someone. One of the smaller channels, or bigger channel, I don't really care, whether it's Cowlek or Kordash or Lunch Meats. There's another guy I'm forgetting already. I completely forgot your name, man. You were totally signed up for doing that big video we were going to do, and we just did not have time to do it. If that's you, leave a comment below. Or Matty Kosa. Matty Kosa's got a great channel. I mean, go find someone and say something nice, because I promise you that all of us are trying to make this game better, and being a heel might get some things done sometimes. Might get some price checks eliminated and make the subreddit a little better. But we don't always need to be that person. So try to go do something positive and, well, give a shout out to your fellow PD2 players while we're all trying to make this game better. And enjoy Season 8. Not much of a rant, is it? I tried.